In this lesson, we'll start looking at expandable list adapters. Expandable list adapters are used in lists that contain sublists. When the user clicks on an item in the main list, it expands to show a list of sub-items. This is similar to a two-level tree view and can be very useful with the relatively small device screens. A tree view is not a natively supported Android control, and it can be difficult with a finger trying to click on the plus or minus for expanding or collapsing a node. In this example, we're going to create a list of departments and the employees in each department. There's a lot going on here, so this will span 2 lessons. In the end, our list will look like this. So I have my main list with the list of departments, and if I select a department, I see the people within the department. Each one of the employees has a status and a name, and when I select it, I get the selection position up in this text view. So that's where we're trying to go to. To get there, the first step we need is an employee item resource. So that's just the name and the status. And in this case, I've actually used a table layout because I want all the statuses to line up in columns. Then I need an employee object, and it very simply is just a container for the name and the status. So this should look a lot like what we did with the custom list adapters, and in fact, it's very similar. When we get to the employee list adapter, we're descending from a thing called a simple list adapter, which does descend from base list adapter, which is what we used in the custom list. But because it's a simple expandable list adapter, it has some characteristics of the simple list adapter that we used earlier, in that it uses Java lists and Java dictionaries and all that kind of stuff. In our list of members, we have some constant strings that define our 2 fields, our name and our status. We keep a copy of the context, which is the activity that we're going to be passing in. Then we have a couple of Java list collections. The first one is the group data. So this is a list of the groups, and then we have a child data group. In our constructor, we populate those. So we pass in the context, then we pass in the group data, we pass in a group layout, and a group from and a group to. If you remember the simple list adapter, we had a similar arrangement where we had to pass in an ID for a resource that we were going to use for the items, and then we had to pass in string arrays that said this is the field name of the from object, and then this is going to be the ID of the resource within the layout to put that from object to. In this case, we do that for the group, and then we also do it for the children. And we pass in child data. And finally, we actually pass in the list view that we're going to populate. So that's quite a constructor. One of the little notes that should be made is that for the group data and the child data collections, we make a copy of those right in our adapter. Often the method that populates the list disposes of the objects, and then they're no longer actually available when we need to use them. And that's one of those bugs that's really hard to find. The debugging is not very good in that respect. There is an override for getChild, and this is called anytime a child is selected, and it provides the group position and the child position. So in this case, we just have code to get the group. It doesn't actually use. In our child collection, we get the data using the group and child positions, and we return that data. I'm going to start with the override for the new child view first, and the get child view will make a little bit more sense then. For the new child view, what it's looking for is the view that will contain a child. So we're going to just create the view using the layout inflator service, and we're going to pass in our employee item resource and inflate that into a view object. Now when I actually use a get child view, I find the text views within the child, and the first one is for name and the second one is for status. And I set their text. When I get the child object value at the group and child positions. Finally, I do a little thing with background color to make it appear correct. So if the child is selected, I set the color to orange, which is the standard Android selection color. Otherwise, I just leave it as transparent. That's a fair amount of the simple expandable list adapter. In the next lesson, we'll see how to use this list adapter to actually create the list.